it's just cognitively going to be an interesting thing to wrap our heads around, probably for both of us, that it's like my kid is going to have grandparents that were immigrants, but also going to have Southern ancestry that goes back for many generations. I just think that's a really cool thing. It's a really cool thing. Welcome to Don't Think Twice. VJ and Stevens is the writing and producing duo of Amrita, VJ, and Andrew Stevens. Best friends, business partners, creative partners, and now, soon to be co-parents. Part 10 of our story brings us full circle. Family. How are our parents, siblings, and extended fam feeling about this new chapter? How will the culture and religion of our upbringings inform the new traditions we build with our child as we carry forward?
So, let's talk a little bit about our families. How receptive have they been?
My parents, I may have alluded to this in the past, but I think we're very certain that this was never going to happen. They were pleasantly surprised by that. I think very receptive, surprisingly receptive. I think they have questions, and it is okay for people to have questions, and it is understandable for people to have questions, and that does not have any correlation to their acceptance of the situation,
These kinds of things, like in this moment where you're sharing this vulnerable information, you may feel like any questions are questions of the whole situation, can make it feel like, oh, well, do you really know what you're doing? Are you really making a smart decision?
Right. It's trying not to be defensive when people have questions.
And not feeling pressured to have an answer always.
Or I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah. But I do know this. This is the kind of relationship we have, or this is what we want, and then we'll have to as a family, work through what happens next.
Can you give some examples of questions or concerns they've had?
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly one of them is about what if Andrew gets married? Going back to this idea that a romantic relationship would then be prioritized over a family relationship. So I think that's definitely a natural question that comes up. My family has also had like financial questions, and have you thought that through? For an older generation in general, marriage is equated with safety, and that there's something that is permanent and safe and like creates obligation, and it's easy to think that something can be forever if it's a marriage. Like, well, if you're not married to the person that you're having a child with, what protections do you have, kind of thing. And like, not that I've been asked that question directly, but I think that's the implication of some of the questions that my parents have had. I did and do remind them that, Andrew and I have known each other for a lot longer than some married couples we know that choose to have children together. I think the questions come from a really positive place, and I have benefited from Andrew's advice to take them in good faith and to try to answer them where I can and not feel pressured when I don't necessarily have an answer. Have you gotten any questions from yours?
My family's very supportive. My mom has always been supportive, and my brother, which are really the two that are closest to me. And then I have some cousins that I'm very close to. And by way of just the family's life experience and all different kinds of family setups and in and out of wedlock. And I think there's a real fundamental just appreciation for the closeness in the family and growing a family with children. They've known of Amrita for near on 12 years, and I'm fortunate to have a family who I feel really trusts me. For that, I'm very fortunate, and then my broader family, my cousins, I just feel like they are very happy for me. It's really a blessing when your figuring out a new kind of family structure, Amrita and I, that I don't need to turn around and explain myself to my family. It's like they know me and my personality, and a part of showing me that they support me is their trust in me.
Yeah. I mean, I have an older sister that I'm very close with, and she has always very implicitly understood, like, it just made perfect sense to her, this progression.
So, and one thing that I've heard you both talk about is that even though your immediate families are no longer questioning this decision or are not asking questions of this decision, more extended communities might be asking your immediate families questions that they don't ask you.
So I come from a pretty big, pretty big family, especially on my mom's side. There's definitely a level of orthodoxy there. Definitely that was a source of some stress. We first told our families, okay, well, now we have to figure out how to tell the extended family. And that did take some time and negotiation. And I wanted to be respectful of, but I really kind of wanted to shield them from having to answer a lot of questions from extended family. So my preference was that I said, I'm really happy to just, put this out on the family WhatsApp thread with like all the aunties on it, and to let people know that they can come to me directly if they have questions, complaints, judgments, whatever. And so that took some time for my mom to feel comfortable. So I did kind of just keep it really simple. Didn't fill in all the details. And I ran that by her before I did it. I personally haven't heard any blowback. There may be some back channeling, but I've only gotten sort of, anything from polite congratulations to very effusive outreach from people. I know this is kind of a long answer, but I just want to add also that I spoke about this with a friend of mine who comes from a similar family background as my mom, very Orthodox South Indian, Tamil. She had a interracial marriage that caused a lot of storm and stress. And, her advice was basically like, well, you're not going to make your decisions based on these other people. They're not going to dictate any of that. So this is in some ways an opportunity to be surprised by the people that you may not know are going to be really supportive, who end up being really supportive. And conversely, unfortunately, maybe discover that there were some people that you thought you were close to that are not supportive. And maybe, she's like, and those people I don't have a relationship with anymore. Like, so it's a little bit painful, but it's also kind of like good to know, good to discover that.
Definitely. And having that clarity about who's really there for you in those moments is big, but it's also really big and brave of you to move forward into that confrontation around that, right? I think it's a big step.
I just felt nervous about it. And, my mom has had to deal with some family drama around her own choices in life. And, so I know that that's an uncomfortable situation, a position for her to be in. So I did feel a lot of anxiety on her behalf, and wanting to make that as easy of a rollout as possible. And I think I would say that with some time having gone past that, we're both kind of pleasantly surprised with the level of chillness from most contingents.
Great. Andrew, what about you? How receptive, what questions and concerns have your family answered for you?
I haven't spoken to my father in years. And so we don't maintain a relationship. And there are many reasons why we don't maintain a relationship. And why one of those general reasons is that because he's never been supportive of the many decisions in my life. So that was a relationship that ended much prior to this situation. And so when I talk about how supportive my family is, I should acknowledge that that's because years ago, I made a determination that the people who weren't supporting me weren't going to be part of my family moving forward. And so I know through the grapevine that my dad has said some things. Over the holidays when my brother was visiting my dad and was asked about how I was doing, and my brother shared the news that I was going to have a child. And my dad's first and only comment was, "Isn't he gay?" And that sort of speaks volumes. I hate to be so dismissive and mean about my dad, because he has good qualities, but he is not someone I would look to be a supportive figure in my life. On the other side of my family, I have only heard vaguely about a comment or two that was made. That's to say, I'm sure there are people with their thoughts in the family, but unlike Amrita, I don't have a large family on either side that, and everyone I do know that I'm close to, and I can say is happy for me.
What's your philosophy on your family's involvement with each other and relations with one another?
Me? I think I have been more and more cognizant of the relationship that a new baby is going to make between me and your family. And this really came to my mind only a few weeks ago, really, when you had some cousins in town, and you were very close to your cousins. I guess intellectually had occurred to me, but maybe emotionally hadn't really occurred to me that, we're not married, but just the biological reality of this child does create a relationship between me and your cousin, and similarly between, your brother is going to be my child's uncle, there is a relationship there that, that's really cool. And I just, I think have been slowly, awakened to that fact that, even though we don't have a marriage relationship, we don't have that type of relationship, that I will have a relationship to your family in a different way, of course, and vice versa.
I'm trying to think back about the first time I met your family, the first time I met your mom or your dad, and it's been years and years and years, which is an interesting thing to think about. And we decided to go about this in this way, having a child. But I knew your family and I liked your family for years, because on some level I did understand that your family is going to be involved, but emotionally I didn't really get there fully until recently when we were as a group in New Orleans with friends, and your sister was there, and she said something about her nephew, and she's talking about my kid, of course, and I knew it, but it was using the word nephew that felt like in that moment it was like shoo, the families have been sucked together by some vacuum.
Yeah,
I was like, that's right. Just as much as I know my brother is looking forward to having a nephew, Aparna is looking forward to having a nephew. And I know that, and now I feel it. Having my cousins here was also interesting because we have recently, my cousins lost their mom, and so that was a big loss, and the family feels like it's smaller. And so when my cousins were telling me how they're excited to have him in our life, it felt really first important and sweet. And so when they were here and talking about him and him coming home to Asheville and everyone it's like, oh yeah, this is a thing.
And there's obviously a lot of implicit questions there about how we divide time with our families and how we celebrate holidays with our families and things like that. But I think in general, it's just a very, there's a lot of people who are excited about the baby. And that's the main thing that's really
Right.
been nice. But yeah, I think it also will create a bond between our families that we don't are yet to know what that's going to be like. And our moms have met, and I think that will be a fun thing to observe how they develop a relationship together and deepen a relationship together.
Will you tell us a little more about what happened last weekend?
Yeah, so we had a Hindu ceremony that is done for a pregnant woman for her first pregnancy.
What's it called?
It's called a Valegapu, which is Vale means bangles, and Gapu means protection or blessing. So it's a chance for people to bestow blessings upon the pregnant woman, symbolized by bangles, putting bangles on her. There was briefly some question about whether I wanted to do it or didn't want to do it, and I really felt like, just because we're having the baby in a non-traditional way, doesn't mean we have to like throw out all the nice ideas of convention and tradition. So it actually started to feel important that we do have like some sort of traditional element for like culturally speaking. Maybe you said this, Andrew, but I think it's like, oh yeah, this is the point of ceremonies, is that they make things feel marked. And it really felt very meaningful, I think, to me, ultimately. So
I'm glad you did it, because tradition
can be beautiful.
Is important to me insofar as it can serve as a way of connecting generations. It can serve, I don't want to have children in a non-traditional way and then buck all tradition in a way that they feel like they're other than something. I mean, your sister had the ceremony.
She did.
And I like that you had the ceremony, because our child, it feels like
it's something that they will share. Yeah. How did you feel about this weekend, the event?
The event was great. Like I said, I like tradition. I especially like tradition when it can be teased out from the things that don't work, whether it's a Hindu priest who wants to do something that you don't agree with, or in my case, a church, a Christian church that believes something that I don't. I enjoyed seeing the tradition. I particularly enjoyed Priya and your mom, our friend Priya and your mom, singing. Music is the tradition that's like probably most important to me in my own, and especially in my own religion. Hymn singing is very important to me, and like takes me back to a place.
Oh, hymn as in HYM. Yeah.
And
I definitely thought you meant him as in like
him, the baby singing.
Oh no, not him.
Hymnals.
So are there traditions that each of you want to carry forward into your new family or into this family?
The short answer is yes, but I am flexible moving forward to what the family becomes. There are no traditions that for me are hard and fast. I want my children to understand what the Christian church is, sort of from a philosophical standpoint, and definitely from a communal standpoint. It'll be determined, though, of course, where we live. I mean that if we're in New York City, it's a different circumstance than if we live somewhere else in the country. If we were to move to the South, I would want my children to feel comfortable in the church. I wouldn't want them to be indoctrinated, and I wouldn't have a concern with that either, because I was raised in the church 3 times a week, and my mother would drive us to church and tell us, you don't need to believe in any of this. I just want you to feel comfortable. And also that was like the cultural core of our community. That aside, but what I pull from that and to your question about tradition is there are certain traditions around holidays, of course, that don't need to be religiously observed, but I do like tradition where we can have holidays to celebrate and then traditions to enjoy together, to look forward to.
If we're talking about religious tradition. Definitely there are, there are Hindu things that I will want to observe. I would like to create some new traditions that I don't already observe around certain Hindu holidays. I think it would be really nice to have traditions that are specific to Christmas, which I do celebrate in a secular way with my family, but to also have, Diwali traditions, and to have Navratri traditions, and have those also be something distinct that that my kid can look forward to also. And it's maybe not something that I'm really have a strong tradition around celebrating myself. I've always wanted to, though. Like, I've always wanted to and I think this is like a good excuse to say, well, this year for Navratri we actually are gonna set up a golu. So I think that'll be a fun thing to sort of decide how. I think Andrew and I in general have a very like open arms policy towards all celebratory things. Like, we just need more things to celebrate. So
I will say, though, that I agree with everything you just said. I noticed on this celebration this past weekend, because I don't have facility in language and music, that it's hard, that there's a distinct advantage that you have, one of the rare, of being like an American and Indian who's raised in a Christian culture, where you can understand Christian culture, and it can be culture and religion, and they can be teased out as much as we want to or not. But I noticed during the ceremonies, like, I wish, particularly I wish I knew things I could sing. I felt sad about that. Only that I just don't have the knowledge.
It's funny that you think of it as like an advantage that I have, whereas I think of it as like, well, I had to be culturally Christian. There's the burden. And I wish that people knew that when it was a holiday for me, and would, know that, or like have a little bit more, just be more conversant in.
But I mean, in our particular family situation.
Yeah. And I think the answer to that is that, if you had been like, I'm going to sing like this Roy Orbison song or something, that would have been like very welcomed. That's like, it's like whatever's in the spirit of the thing is much more important than it being in a particular language, or it's like,
and in that way we can create our own tradition.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a very religious answer to your question, for two people that are like not really that religious on a day-to-day basis, but these are certain things I think about. And like also I think about language. Like, I want to have a better facility in Tamil, because I would love for my child to have some facility in that.
And was it an important part of your growing up?
Language? Mm-hmm. Tamil was, I think, my first language. But yeah, and I think it's important. It's been important to me, especially because like the older generations in my family have less facility with English, and so being able to understand them is important. And I wish I was a little bit better at making myself understood to them.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that it's about like connecting with this part of yourself, potentially connecting with your child self, or connecting with the part of yourself that wants to connect with others in your family, and giving your child the capacity to do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's two things. It's definitely the ability for my child to connect with people in my family, certainly. But I think there's the other part of that is not just me and my, like, my feeling with my family, but just in general, this is a child that is going to be Indian, but is also going to be white. And I do have some anxiety about wanting the kid to feel comfortable in Indian spaces, or feel like they're Indian enough, or, and not be worried about that, or not, and also not like reject their non-white part, the part of them that is not white. Because I think it can be very easy to do that, and maybe easy to default to that. So I have a little bit of anxiety, I think, about that.
That makes a ton of sense to me as a half Jewish person. And I know that none of my other half Jewish people in my generation are like seriously considering Judaism and rituals of Judaism. as a path to connection with themselves or our ancestors or like others in our communities. And I think there's a real loss, and that's a real loss of subjectivity and depth and nuance of our narratives, and also a real loss of who we are. What do you think your family will look like? Do you envision more than one kid?
I envision more than one kid. I envision that, and we will see. I would like 2 or 3.
I don't know.
What about more than 1?
I don't know. We'll see what we'll see what the childbirth process is like. That's a big deal. It's a big deal to me. And see what it's like to have one. And I
agree, of course.
Open. I am open. I'll say that. I'm definitely open to more than one. But, it's been a long haul. So I'm like, oh man, let's climb this mountain before we start climbing the next one. But yes, no, I'm very open. I'm open to it. Who's to say that we might not have a child via surrogate in the future,
right.
Or, or there's other ways for children to come to adoption. Like, there are other ways that I would be open
foster.
To. Absolutely. So like, it could be another biological child, could be another pregnancy. It could be something different. I'm open to it, but I'm also like, all right, let's get through this first one.
How do you express commitment to each other as a family?
One, it's the physical time that you are committed to spend with one another. It's the physical distance we are, the close proximity we are to each other. It's a commitment of family, and those are just the physical.
Yeah, I think it's about again, because we don't have a template for what commitment to our family looks like. It's about just affirming that commitment to one another, often verbally, getting on the same page, figuring out when we aren't, and things like filling out the Chosen Family Law Institute paperwork, or even doing this podcast sometimes highlights the things where it's like, oh wait, we're maybe not like exactly in step, but we don't have to be. Like, we just have to affirm that we're willing to talk about it and figure out how to get in step. I think our commitment is more to working through any conflict that arises, or working through any difference in philosophy that arises.
And we don't know the kid we're going to get.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about what our commitment to each other is and how we see, but we are committed to being a family, and we're committed to the conversation, and that I think we have to be committed to doing what is in the best interest of our family, which is in the best interest of our children. And so that might mean sacrifices on our part.
What do you want your kids to call you?
Dad.
Yeah, mom, or some version of that.
And how much will you explain to your kids about your relationship?
I will answer every question they ever have. I don't think kids get confused at a young age about dynamics. Kids develop emotionally at certain ages. So there are some things that just aren't appropriate to tell a kid because they can't emotionally understand what it even means. It's just a balance of telling them anything they want to know that's age appropriate, explaining to them the dynamics of the family, answering any questions they have when they head out into the wider world and return and say, this looks different than the kid down the street, and just being open to that and non-defensive, which we won't be. And then as they grow up and more occurs to them and they're more able to understand the intricacies and the complexities, then we'll share more.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to be as open as is cognitively appropriate. And I don't think questions will come up for a little while, especially because we also happen to be a man and a woman. So that might delay some of the questions actually, but I'm very willing to be open about it before there are even questions. I think there will be probably plenty of people in the kid's life who have, who are being raised by their grandparents or being raised by two moms, or, and just, I think it's never really too early to let kids know that there are a lot of different ways that families look. And the most important thing is that they have adults who are committed and care about them, and they know that they're safe and all those things.
So I sort of look forward to that. Actually, I'm not scared of it at all.
During this conversation, I just had this image of the two of you as like cartoon characters, like in a sped up montage of your lives where like you spend time together and then you like float off and do other things. And then you spend time together and then you like spend more time together and then you live together and you like do a lot of work together and you do a lot of cool projects together. And then you like make this baby. And it's a beautiful platonic love story, and I think if you describe your story to your child as friendship, they're going to think that friendship is this deep and beautiful, intimate thing, which we aren't always taught, and what a gift to teach your child that,
Absolutely.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful notion. And absolutely, like, I think we're all lucky to have different types of love and different types of relationships in our lives. And absolutely, like Andrew, you're one of the great loves of my life.
Same.
And we should all be so lucky to have that. This is the last of our planned episodes in this series, but we'd love to hear from you. These episodes were recorded prior to our baby's arrival in mid-May 2023. Would you be interested in hearing a fourth trimester update as we hit the 3-month mark? Continued updates as we navigate parenthood as friends? What questions are you left with after all this? Don't be shy. Slide into our DMs at VJ and Stevens on Instagram, or send your feedback to our general mailbox at vjandstevens@gmail.com. That's VIJAY and Stevens with a PH. Or you can leave a review on your podcast app of choice. We normally use this space as a no-holds-barred outlet to discuss our free-range, freewheeling, freelance lives. You can subscribe to follow us where we take this podcast next. We want to send the deepest and most heartfelt thanks to our host and moderator, Marina Weiss, who helped make this series of episodes possible with her dedication to late-night recording sessions over weekly dinner. We thank her for her compassion, curiosity, and her determination to make two very private people share their feelings, which was much harder work than you think. Find Marina at marinaweiss.com, and as always, look us up at vjandstevens.com. We'll sign off this time with our longtime motto for this show. If you're thinking about taking a leap off the beaten path in any part of your life, our advice is, don't think twice.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Marina, I have things to say. Nuts in my mouth.
Jesus.
What? You weren't recording, were you? Trying to do less of, but it's really hard.
I don't think it matters if we do it because we can turn the volume down.
Mouth noises.
Yeah.
Our band mouth noises will be really hot, and we'll just start the album.
I can hear everyone through here, so I can really hear myself.
But in the beginning of that Billie Eilish album where she takes her retainers out, it's mouth noises. We could have that kind of thing at the beginning of our first album with our band mouth noises.
I grossed my own self out.
Are you going to make your child sing opera?
No.
Not opera, but I'll make him sing bluegrass.
Your kid is going to be like that,
so
maybe.
Funny. It's so
I'm very
cute.
excited. Your oven has a song for us.